Welcome back to My Creative Classroom for another amazing episode about transforming education. Whether you're listening to us on your preferred streaming platform or watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and share. I am excited about today's episode because it is a tool that focuses on bringing a lifelike learning experience to both teachers and students. I am joined by VICO Communications, the creators of VICO SmartBoard, co-founder Max Kabanov, and part of their testing team, Gleb Matichov, to talk about how this tool can truly transform learning. Thank you both for joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
All right, gentlemen, so let's dive right in. Let's tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about who you are and how you came to be co-founder and part of the testing team for VICO Communications SmartBoard.
My name is Max, so I'm a co-founder of VICO Communications, and we decided to create VICO after I'm struggling to find an appropriate application for my own child. I realized that we don't have a suitable app on the market that designed specifically for education, and the application that not mean to change the learning experience, the classic learning experience. But just makes it possible on a distance. I mean that when we're working in the real classroom, we have a blackboard, we have our personal notes, and we see and hear the teachers, the other classmates, and we want to bring that experience to the distance learning application. And when we start using the Zoom-like application, we realize that kind of application is focused on the business needs and not suitable for the classical classroom work. And that's why we are trying to create something that might be useful in a real classroom. And the Gleb, he is a tutor for my child, and he is now working with VICO SmartBoard when teaching my child English. So you could say a few words about that experience.
Yes, my name is Gleb. I'm part of the testing team for VICO Communications, and what the app does is it brings to life during the distance format of education. So, for example, this year with the COVID virus, we saw most schools shutting down, both here in Russia and in the United States. And students for months on end were sitting at home trying to somehow transfer the learning experience that you get in a classroom into a home environment. Unfortunately, different applications like Skype, Zoom, even Discord has been used this year. They haven't been able to live up to the needs of teachers and students alike. So what this application does, what VICO does, is it transfers the learning experience you get in a classroom into a home setting where you can use your iPad or your computer to teach students and learn. And I have to say, from personal experience working with the app and being these students on distance learning, that it's a remarkable piece of technology that allows you to transfer that experience. I have no problem writing on the app and giving his son all the information he needs, and he understands it perfectly. It really is a whiteboard. It's like any other whiteboard that you write on, like on a piece of paper. You can transfer it later on. You can change colors. You can use any sort of utensil or eraser, anything that you might find in an actual classroom you can find on this SmartBoard.
So let's dive into that smartboard. You guys have kind of dropped some information here, and I think our listeners and our viewers are probably intrigued to know more about what the VICO smartboard is and does. So you mentioned there, Gleb, that you can download it to your iPad or use it on a computer. So is this an app? Is it available on Android devices? Is it available on iOS devices, Chromebooks? What is it available on?
Right now we are focusing on the iPad because it has best experience in the market. With an Apple Pencil, it's the writing on the writing on our iPad. It's like writing in real pencil.
It's extremely similar to writing in a regular notebook. It might take a couple hours to get used to. But after that, there is no problem, absolutely. The problem with earlier technologies that were used by Samsung and Android with their pens was that the writing was not that good. It didn't feel like your handwriting, and I think everyone had that experience the first time they got an Android pencil. Apple Pencil and their technologies really, what's the word? It's very similar, bottom line. It's very similar to writing in a regular notebook.
So it's available on iOS devices. And as you mentioned there, the Apple Pencil, kind of this fluid ability. It makes you feel like you're writing in a book or whatever. So how does it connect the teacher to the students? How is this? Is it that everyone just has this, the VICO SmartBoard open and they're all just writing and taking notes? Or is there a way to connect in between teacher-student?
There's kind of the most simple way to invite the application. You just open it and type the name of the classroom. And when you type the name, you just create it. And then you can send the invites to that room via any messenger or using the AirDrop. So when you, in the actual classroom, when your students are near to you, you could just send an invite via AirDrop, or when they are at home, you could just send it via any messenger or email.
You just send the link. The student clicks on the link, and he automatically joins into the classroom. Very similar to Zoom in that format, except unlike Zoom, you probably won't find yourself in a different room, or altogether the classroom won't be available. We had no problems at all with the link. You asked a question about the format. How do teachers and students interact? And once again, Max here tried to mirror the experience in a classroom as much as possible. So each student has their own notebook, which they can open in the app and write in. And the teacher can look at that notebook. There is also, for the teacher himself or herself, they have a blackboard, and they can write on that for all students to see. It's also interesting, after the class is over, you don't have to, students don't have to even write all this stuff down that the teacher wrote. You can just save it as a PDF file and send it to all your students. It's a very interesting and very, very helpful feature, because Skype and all those different applications do not do that.
And that's actually a really cool feature that you just touched upon, which is, as I'm writing on the whiteboard and I'm writing on this smartboard, essentially my iPad, the students can see it, live it real time as I'm writing. And then at the end of the day, which is probably the best feature you just mentioned so far, is you can save it, right? And we've access to other smart or whiteboards that we can use, but we can't save that writing piece. And you just said, export it as a PDF, save it. So you don't have to repeat that. That's amazing. And you've actually compared it. Actually, you've said the words Skype and Zoom several times. So is there a video feature in this? Like, that's what we would associate Skype to. So how am I communicating as a teacher with my students while using the VICO SmartBoard?
At the start, we're planning to deploy the video feature within the app, but then we realized that we only need to hear each other. We only need to just voice communications, because the format of their device, it's it's an iPad. It's usually it's laid down on a table, and the camera is showing you the film in the ceiling, and it's not kind of very convenient to use it in kind of I don't know. It's not convenient to point the camera to you when you're writing on the table. So that's why we cut off this feature and we only left the voice communication. And the second benefit of that decision was that app is really works really great on the bad internet connection. So you don't need a great bandwidth to work with that. And it could be a cell or the cellular coverage or just not a bad internet connection. Everything's gonna be fine. You get real-time communication because the voice that doesn't need the broadband bandwidth. And working on a whiteboard is gonna be just like in real time, when you're writing on the blackboard. It's almost instantly showing up on their other screens. So it's mimic the situation when you're working with your partners in one place near to each other. When you open the workbook and showing you what's going on.
It mimics exactly what is happening on the other screen. It's there is almost no delay in the voice. It doesn't lag. It doesn't cut off. Which is great once again, because when you have a classroom I personally only have the experience working one-on-one, one-on-two, etc. But when you have a classroom of 20 students and you have to hear all of them and you have to organize all of them, when it's lagging and it's constantly cutting off, it just cuts into education time. It's not a good feature at all. VICO does not have this problem. I have never encountered this problem at all.
That's actually, you just raised a good point, Max, which I never even thought of, was if you had the camera turned on and trying to do a video conference, you'd either be staring up my nose or at the ceiling, or awkwardly trying to give yourself this selfie shot while writing on the board. So, great idea using just the audio, and reduces the lag time, which, we've experienced over the past, over a year now. That bandwidth is a huge thing, especially when you get multiple users on board. And Gleb, you just mentioned that, working one-on-one or one-on-two in a class of 20, is there a limit to the number of people that could be using or I can share my link to my SmartBoard with?
Right now, we think it's a pretty big number. It's 64 students, might be in one classroom. It's up to 64 users.
Wow, and that's actually really decent, right? Because I would say no classroom's ever going to reach that amount. But, great to partner with other classrooms, though.
Amount in China.
Okay. So a great amount. And you mentioned also the audio feature. Is there, can students just kind of unmute themselves and start talking? Or is there kind of this raise your hand feature and the teacher controls who speaks and when?
Yeah, the teacher control the whole experience in the classroom. So he could restrict drawing on the board and could mute all the students. But when the students want to raise a hand, they just press the button, raise a hand, and the teacher could call him to the board. And then even if the drawing is restricted and that student was muted before, he get access to the board, and everyone could hear that student, so he could answer at the board just like in a real classroom.
So you just said call them to the board. So you actually mean, like, as I, the teacher, have my board that I'm writing on, am able to call you, Max, to come to my board and write and kind of say something to the class.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, that's amazing. Because a lot of the tools that we use, right, don't have those features. It would just be kind of this delivering material. And now you're saying, you know what, I'll let you come and write on the front of the board, for example, to share that with the classroom. That's amazing. That's huge for you to be able to do that within the app.
So that's the point. We don't want to change their that classic educational process. So, and it's really amazing that there are so many apps doesn't have that basic features that everybody are familiar from the classroom.
Yeah, it doesn't change the experience at all. There isn't this transitional process where you learn how to somehow try to incorporate all of the things that you try to do in a classroom into a distance format. So you don't have like 5 different kinds of applications to try to mimic the classroom. It's very simple. It's very simple to understand. It's very easy to learn. Anyone can learn it. I spent about 5 minutes figuring the app out. It wasn't that big of an issue.
And that's something too, you know, that learning curve is always that scary part for educators, but for it to be so simple to learn and navigate and use is huge. So let's get to a bit of a privacy question now. So as an educator, how do I log in? Do I need to subscribe? Do I need to pay to be able to use the VICO SmartBoard? And then how do my students log in, or do they need to?
Well, right now, when you're creating the room, you could create the room name like a password. So it's going to be a long room name with special symbols, and you get a link that almost with pretty big security. But in future, we're going to make the Zoom-like features when we could create not just the room name, with even if it's kind of complex. Also, we're gonna have features that offers the functionality of making password for that room. But even right now, with a complex room name, it's not a big issue with security, because it's pretty big numbers to get that room name for any intruder or something.
Yeah, it's all you have to do essentially when you log into the app. You create a room, same as in Zoom, and that name of the room is the password. So essentially, you log into a room, for example, and you say, "All right, like this room is going to be called like mathematics, like 105 or something like that." And you just send that link out to everyone, and no one can access the room unless they have the link, or they type in those specific numbers and letters into the search bar. Not even a search bar, the room box when you enter the application. So unless it's very simple, like just English or something like that, there should not be an issue with security.
And that's great to have those room names be the unique identifiers that you mentioned, you know, are not super guessable unless you use something so basic. But even at that, it means someone would have to search that or type in that name specifically as you wrote it to try to get into your room and use your board. So one question we mentioned earlier, which was being able to save the teacher notes as a PDF. As students are using this, as students are typing or writing their own notes on the SmartBoard, are they able to then export or share that with the teacher somehow?
Of course. First of all, the teacher can actually look, as I said, at the notes while they're writing, and the students can save their files as well, right?
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
we could save the Blackboard and the notes.
Wow,
So you could save it. Yeah, you could save it on your personal device, and on the next class, lesson, you can upload what you have on the previous lesson.
That's actually that's a big feature as well. You can upload different documents into your notes, onto the Blackboard, whatever you choose. So, for example, you have a sheet of questions. There's a test going on or a questionnaire, and you have a sheet of questions, problems, whatever. and you can just upload that sheet onto the application. It will appear as a page on the whiteboard, and all the students can see it. All the students can write on it if need be, with the teacher's permission, of course. It's a very elegant system, and it works.
Well, that's actually super amazing too. So I could upload a picture or like a graph if I was doing mathematics, and then have the students, find new coordinates or write the coordinates of the next point or something like that on the actual document.
Yeah, you could publish it on a blackboard to just send it to the students' notebook, and after that, as a teacher, you could tape the notebook button, and you see all the student notebook in a tile view. It's like a tile view with every note, and you can see what's going on, see the progress, and you can open that any of the students' notebook and see what's going on in real time, and you can make marks or correct any mistake.
So, for example, if a test is going on or something else, you give the students, let's say 15 students, a sheet of questions, say mathematical problems. You give it to each of them. They send it to each of their notebooks. They have it in their notebooks. They can write on the sheet or on the next page, whatever they decide. And you can, while the test is going on, you can just go around the different notebooks, the students' notebooks, and look at what they're doing. You can make corrections if need be. You could say, all right, Jeremy, you need to do this, or John, you need to do this. It's interesting, and once again, one-on-one voice as well, so you can mute all the other students and leave just that one, etc.
Wow, and we've covered so many features already. It's hopefully our listeners and our viewers realize how many features are packed into this, the VICO SmartBoard, because we've talked about the ability to speak to one another through the audio feature. You can, and that one just blew me away, where you can upload that document so that you can write on it. It's not just this whiteboard. It's not just a blackboard. There's so much more to it. And then you just talked about this dashboard, if you will, where you can see everyone's notebook. So I just want to go there for a minute. So you mentioned being able to see progress or things like that. So as a teacher, can I see when students are in their notebook working, or what kind of information comes back to me as the educator to see what students are doing while they're there?
Right now, we could just enter that the student personal space and see what he's doing. We don't have any additional indicators about what he's doing right now, because it's kind of personal space. But we open for their feature request, and that's what we are looking for. So when the teachers wanted some features, we plan that and deploy it in a few months. So it could be an interesting feature for the next releases. So thank you, Brian, for this.
There's so many things already, and it's just little ideas too, things that you start to think about. But what you just said is great, which is feedback from teachers who are using it and saying, here's what I think. Could we add this? And being open to that feedback is huge too, as an organization, and not say, this is the product and this is how it's going to stay. So being able to open up and say, we welcome that. So that brings me to kind of a next question, which is professional learning for teachers. Is there, let's say, teachers who are listening to this podcast right now and saying, I'd love to use this. I'd love to use the VICO SmartBoard in my classroom. Is there some sort of professional learning that you guys offer, or some training, or some tools or tips that teachers can reach out to you for help as they get started with the program?
We could help the teachers to get on the VICO board. So it's not a really big deal, but the common thing is that the application is the simple as possible. So it took us a lot of time to make it really simple. So it's often need a lot more time and resolving some complex things to bring the simplicity to the customer. So that's That was our main goal, to make it simple and mimic the classroom experience. So I think they're gonna be much easier to similar app to get on that board.
Yes, there is no tutorial or tips and tricks section to help, and that actually might be a thing to add in the future. So when you log into the application for the first time, you can there's a little tutorial video or little markers that show what is what and how to use it, etc. That might be a feature to add. But as Max said, it is a very simple application. It's not that difficult to understand. Obviously, some people might have difficulty with it, but like any other application, you can kind of use your intuition to figure it out. But I think definitely a good idea is to add on.
And I think we've said it throughout this interview. We've talked about how easy it is to use, which hopefully our listeners realize that we keep saying it's easy to use, and it's meant to mimic, that in-class ability to connect with your students and have them be part of, writing on this board. And it's a collaborative opportunity for the classroom beyond the four walls, which I think is huge. And we've been saying that throughout this whole conversation, that it's not so difficult that there's a 10-page manual. That's huge, right? And I think it's you pick it up, you download the app from the App Store onto your iOS device, and I think you'll realize how easy it is to start using. And I've used it. I've downloaded it, I've started using it, and it's amazing the features that are in there and the ease of use as you start saying, here, use this link, join me on the SmartBoard, right? Come over and be part of my conversation, because it's if you're used to Zoom, if you're used to a Google Meet or whatever it might be, you've done it already. You're just doing it in a different platform that offers you the ability to collaborate through this SmartBoard. And I think that is amazing. And hopefully our listeners go to the App Store, download it, and check it out. But also they can head over to VICOCom, so VICOCOM.com, to see more about it, because there is some great information on your website as well, and some great snapshots that show what it can do. Now, gentlemen, I'm at a part in the show that I love to call the Specialist Top 5. And my question to you, and this goes out for our listeners, what are the top 5 ways that you think the VICO SmartBoard can help teachers transform learning, whether it be in or out of the classroom?
Right. So the first thing is that it's simple, that mimic the real classroom. It is suitable for the actual classroom work and the distance learning. We could talk about that, but it's like a blended education, when the part of the student could work in an actual classroom and part of them are on distance. The first thing is that app is absolutely free, so it's nothing to worry about. You could just download it and try it. And the last thing is, what's the last thing?
I would say lack of problems. That's a big one for me. No problems while using it. Very clean, very simplified.
And a design, design specifically for the education, not the business.
And that's something we haven't talked about, which is design. So thank you for that top 5. Those are a great top 5, and hopefully, I keep saying it, hopefully our listeners check it out. But we haven't talked about the design. So 2 things, the design, and then let's talk about that distance learning that we just kind of touched upon a little bit. So the design is easy and user-friendly and easy to use. So how did you guys come up with the design of the way, like the layout of the buttons in the SmartBoard itself?
Wow, it's like
trial and error. We found what is easy to use. How is it? Because the tough thing with a small screen, which is relatively small when you're talking about an iPad, is that sometimes the buttons and all the different features can clash. So you can press on stuff accidentally. turn the wrong page, etc. There's a whole list of problems that can happen, and with trial and error, you just have simplicity. For example, at the bottom, you can choose different formats of your pen. So if you have a pen or marker, the thickness of your brush, etc., and all the different colors, features, and at the very top, you have the let's say the interface. So you can pull out the students. There's a special button for that. You press it, and you can see all the students. You can hide that if you want. So the whiteboard.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. You have to think at first.
Yeah.
Just you can bring all the feature and in separate buttons without any thinking, and it's gonna be a complex application. But when you every morning you wake up, you call to your partner, and you start to decide what that feature is gonna look like, how you open that thing in an application, how to make it that really simple. That is a really complex process, and you have to think about each functionality and take it with a very careful approach, and then you could create the application that only have everything you need for the classroom work on the simple with the two. It's only have the application only have two forms, so only two forms cover almost every educational aspect. Just like in a real classroom, we have a notes, we have a blackboard, and that's it. Everything else is interaction, and we give the teachers and students that tool that covers all the classroom experience. So that's the only secret. You have to think about each thing in the app and and you have to think about the customers, the teachers, the students, how they're gonna use it, how to make it really simple. You don't want to make it like Excel or something.
You don't want to, you don't want to make it overly complicated. As we've said many times, it's easy to use, and during development, you have to put yourself in the user's place. And I've been working with the app for a long time now. It's just simple. That's the best thing about it. Really, it mimics everything that you find in the classroom, while keeping it simple and without any excess buttons or features that no one will ever use and no one will ever need.
And we keep saying it simple, and I love it. We keep saying it that way, and I love that it's been designed that way, because simple is effective. We don't need too many buttons. We don't need too many, highlighters or whatever that we would never use. We have it simple, and the tools are there for the teachers to be able to do their lessons effectively. And Max, you mentioned something earlier during your top 5, which was distance learning. So I failed to ask this question earlier. We're sharing links with people. Do we have to be on the same network to be able to access the link and use the SmartBoard, or can we join a SmartBoard from everywhere and everywhere?
You could be anywhere. Yeah,
if you have internet connection, you can join.
Yeah, no matter where you are. You could be in the back of the car while you getting on vacation and doing your homework or working with a teacher. That doesn't matter where you are. You have the really mobile device. You don't need a good internet connection, and it's absolutely free. So
and how could you go wrong, right? It's free, and you just said it there, which is you could be anywhere and join on the whiteboard, right? You can join the link. So that is amazing. It's simple. I think 2 favorite words of educators: it's simple and it's free. So those are 2 key words that we keep hitting on here: simple and free. So gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time to join me on the podcast. But before we head off, is there anything else that you'd like to add and tell our listeners that we may not have covered in our conversation?
There's only one thing. It's a blended education. When we realize that existing application is not only focusing on the business meeting needs. This application, you don't need that kind of application, like Zoom-like application, in an actual classroom. So when you already see the teacher, so he stand at the board, so you already see him. You don't need to use that functionality. But with VICO, you could use it in a real classroom as well as on distance. As a teacher, you could bring your iPad to the classroom. You could share your screen on the panel, on a big TV panel. So every student has their iPad on the table. So every student get information about the Blackboard on an actual Blackboard and on his own iPad. And that brings us think that you could use that application as a student at home and in an actual school. So you don't have to change your app. So when you get into the school, you're using iPad with some whiteboard app, some notes or something. But when you get in at home, you don't have to use Zoom. You're using the same application that you are using already at the school. So you don't have that transition between homeschooling and an actual classroom at school.
It blends really easily. You can take the iPad that you have at school and you can finish your homework on the bus or whatever you were doing in the classroom. And at home, same thing, just open up the same application. Once again, as we said, you don't need 5 different applications for everything that you're doing, for writing, video calls, voice calls, textbook formatters, etc. The whole list of them. One application, that's all you need. You have it at school, you can use data, if you have an internet connection and an iPad, you're good.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge statement. It's not just this distance learning model. It's while you're physically in the classroom, to your exact point, Max, you can use this so that students can see what you're writing up on the board, but also have it right in front of you. So you're engaging in a collaborative learning environment, using your iPad, using the VICO SmartBoard here. And then when class is over, you're not leaving and saying, oh, now I need to use a different app. You're using the same app. You're connecting via the same tool that you were just using in the classroom. And I love that idea. You can be on the bus and I can keep using the app. I'm in the back of the car. As soon as I get home, I can even reconnect, right? We can connect there as well. So I think those are great, great features on top of it being simple and free. So I encourage all of our listeners and all of our viewers to head over to the website vicocom.com, so VICOCOM.com, to check out more information about what this smartboard looks like and feels like, and head over to the App Store. Download it for your iOS device. Check it out. It's free. There's no sign up. It's simply download, open, and start using. I appreciate you both, Max and Gleb, taking the time out of your day to join me on the podcast to share your story about how you created this smartboard and why it's so simple and free. To all of our listeners, don't forget to follow us on social media at MyCreativePod. And as always, stay tuned and stay creative. My name is Brian Willett, and this was My Creative Classroom.